And good morning, Hoosier Nation, and welcome to this post-Big Ten, post-Selection Sunday, special-ish, kind of, I could say, edition of Hoosier Morning After. This is Hoosier Morning After. Good news, good stuff. I'm your host, Chad Schwarzkopf. Here with me always is Martha, the Mop Lady. In today's show, we're going to kind of break down what happened at the Big Ten Tournament and look ahead to a wonderful March, a wonderful bracket, a happier bracket, a happier March than we've had in the past as a Hoosier Nation fandom and everything. First, I apologize, guys, tear off a little bit of the scab and talk about a little bit of bitter stuff and everything. Going back to the Big Ten Tournament, obviously, Friday, March 10th, Indiana beat Maryland 70-60, and then went on Saturday to lose to Penn State 77-73. My overall take on both of those games was just Indiana came out in different ways between both games with very lots of energy and scoring really well, especially in the Maryland game. Got down, but battled. And I think that is something that I take away most from these games is that Indiana is a different team now than they have been in the past, and it's a team that battles and has chances and puts themselves in opportunities to win games. This is not a team that's going to go belly up and is going to give up. They're going to fight. They're going to try to find a way, and we got very close in those games and had moments to possibly get back in these games. And a few of the supporting casts even had some good moments in both games. I thought Race Thompson had some good moments in both games. The Maryland game got a little bit scary at the end when Race got in there and had those turnovers towards the end. And then Penn State had that ridiculous dunk that who knew that Race could be that athletic and everything. I thought Jalen Hood-Schifino overall had a pretty good tournament in what he supplied. A few turnovers here and there in the Penn State game that were ill-advised as well, but a good game. And Trace Jackson-Davis was Trace Jackson-Davis, 24 points in both games from him. But it did what we needed to do in those games, and we played, we competed, and the biggest thing is no one got injured. Let me kick it over to my co-host with me, Martha. Give me kind of your overall thoughts on Indiana in this Big Ten tournament.
Yeah, I think my overall, I think it's kind of a microcosm of Indiana's season as a whole, right? I mean, a lot of good spots, but kind of a roller coaster ride where there's some inconsistencies as well. And I think I left Sunday with a little bit of disappointment. That taste of disappointment in my mouth. There's an incredible opportunity right there in front of them to beat a team that had kind of pounded them earlier in the season. And, when you think about the guys who are winding down their college career, it's like, okay, here's a chance to go out and win a trophy and, leave with some hardware. And I thought, it's just the Big Ten tournament. Yeah, the positive side is an extra day of rest to get ready for, the big dance. And I heard all those arguments, but I don't know that they necessarily landed all that well for me. It's like, here's a chance to win a Big Ten championship, the tournament championship, to beat a team and that had beaten you and pounded you early in the season and go face your rival one more time. And I liked everything about that. And I thought they'd come out and really take it to Penn State. And it was just a game that they never really got into their flow. I mean, there was some time there in the second half where they fought back. And even towards the end, you saw them kind of chip away and have a chance there at the end. But just it was kind of littered with inconsistencies. But I do, to your point, I think there were some bright spots. I think Tamar is continuing to take that step that's positive for the team. And I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit. But to have somebody like him step up when we need that person to step up. I think some good things. I'm worried about Trey a little bit. I mean, I don't think he scored in the Big Ten tournament, so it makes me wonder if there's something that's bothering him a little bit. But all in all, I think it gives us a chance to kind of reset. I like the fact that we've got a week to prepare for the tournament, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, we'll briefly kind of talk about that as Tamar has been a source of frustration for Hoosier Nation. As we know, the big growth that he had in the offseason, his commitment, we constantly hear that he's a gym rat. He's always in there working out, doing what he can. And we just hadn't seen it from him. And February especially was a very tough month for him. And then he goes in this game and is the second leading scorer, finishes with 14 points, 50% from the field, 2 of 5 from 3 for him, and finishes with the best plus minus on the team in that Penn State game at 5. And that's great. I think that is probably one of the best storylines for Indiana coming out of the Big Ten tournament, is to get a Tamar Bates that is going. We obviously last year that trophy was passed on to Jordan Geronimo. Jordan was kind of the one that started to go towards the end and everything. And this year, where we kind of are lacking, if you had to give me a magic wand and tell me I have one thing I can improve on this Indiana team, and it's going to be that secondary level of scoring from someone other than Jalen Hood-Schifino and Trace Jackson Davis, and that bench scoring or something in those regards. And Tamar Bates starting to get going is obviously trending in the right direction. The Trey Galloway thing is a little interesting as well. I mean, I don't know if he's nursing something. He's just going through a hump. I mean, the kid goes with full throttle all the time. He might be a little tired, so I'm not too concerned because he is such a knowledgeable player for IU. He is, he'll get back into it. I'm not as concerned about him. And then Race Thompson getting going as well. It is the other bright spot going into this. And you mentioned that, yes, it would have been nice to go into the championship, get some hardware for these guys and play Purdue. But I hate to say, and I don't know if it's because I'm the IU cynic in those regards, and I'm tainted with the Big Ten tournament, but I lean a little bit overall when you hear that discussion about conference tournaments. They scare me because the last thing that I'd want to happen is one of our guys to get injured in a conference tournament. The conference tournament means less to me than the March Madness tournament. So I would hate to lose someone in those regards to jeopardize what they can do there. As I preview a little bit to what we're going to talk about a little bit later, that's something that kind of Miami's struggling with. Their big man got injured in their conference tournament. So would hate for that to have happened for IU. What are your kind of overall thoughts in that framework? Do you like conference tournaments? Or do you jump the fence like I do?
I've learned to hate them just because I've seen IU struggle in them for the last 25 years. So in that regard, when you think about it, I don't necessarily understand the point. I mean, I do in a large scale. I mean, it's all about money, TV, and all the things that matter at that level. But when you talk about playing especially with the Big Ten, you play a grind. We beat up each other all season long, so why not throw another tournament at the end where we beat up each other a little bit more? It doesn't. I don't understand the point in that sense. But the flip side of it is, we've got some guys who are winding down their college career, and I want to see them play all the basketball they can. Right? I mean, we're guaranteed one more game with these guys, and that's where I start to think about why not, if we're going to play these games, why not go out, try to battle, try to win? I'm not saying they didn't try to win, but I just felt like it's just the same inconsistencies popped up, and I thought they would have come out with just a little bit more focus. And the game plan, everything involved with Penn State, it was just one of those things where, man, I would have thought they would have been a lot more ready to play against a team that kicked their butt early in the season and a chance to go out and play for a Big Ten tournament championship. But again, end of the day, it's one of those things where, if Trace if he is dealing with something, if there's some things like that going on, you've now got close to a week. You don't play until 9:55 on Friday. That's a lot of time to get right before the tournament. So there's that side of it too. So end of the day, it's Big Ten tournament. I've learned to hate it, whatever. I would have loved to see us win it. I'm a little bit upset we didn't take advantage of that, but at the end of the day, it's fine to see it in the rearview mirror.
Yeah, and where I believe it does obviously benefit conference tournaments, that is is when you get to those mid majors and everything, because it obviously gives the tournament champions a chance at or gives them a spot in the tournament and everything. What interesting becomes the debate with that as well is obviously, as any tournament can go, March Madness and conference tournaments included, is you just have one funky night, one off night, and you're out of the conference tournament and you're out of the NCAA tournament. And that's interesting to me as from a mid-major standpoint and from an automatic bid type of standpoint, that they go by the tournament and they don't go by regular season winners. Again, I guess the debate can be tossed around there, as well as if teams are hot at the end of the year and they had some struggles or some injuries during their conference play, they can write that and get that bid by winning their tournament when they are playing at their best, as opposed to a team maybe that's kind of coasted through and done decent enough to win the conference, but is maybe not playing well at the end of the year. So there's a weird, interesting debate there. Obviously, that's more for our mid-major friends to kind of debate and talk about. And I guess that's kind of a good segue into kind of talking about and shifting to IU's draw, as IU is playing one of those mid-major teams that did get the automatic bid, and Kent State. Looking overall, before we kind of delve into Kent State's draw of playing Kent State, what is your overall thoughts on just IU's seeding and where they landed and everything?
Yeah, I'm happy with it. Right, I was hoping that, in the best case, and I think worst case scenario was leaving with maybe a 5 seed, provided the Big Ten tournament didn't go well, and I think the ceiling was maybe if you went on to win the Big Ten tournament championship, maybe play your way into a 3 seed. But all things considered, to when you when we take a step back and look at kind of how the Big Ten season started and how it transpired and some of the wins that IU was able to get, to kind of play themselves. I think we don't, at times when we end in a loss against Penn State like that, sometimes we don't, and maybe we will once the season's over, but we don't take a step back to appreciate kind of how far Mike Woodson's brought the program in 2 years, right? Our best season since 2016, our best tournament seed since that year. So he's checking a lot of boxes in terms of getting this program back to a reputable place. And so you've got to appreciate that. But I think, to answer your question, I think the 4 seed was a good landing spot for this team. I think that meant that they were going to have a tournament win or two in the Big Ten tournament, and that's exactly what happened. So you look at that, you look at their draw. I don't think there's any way you can't be happy. Kent State concerns me a little bit, and we're going to get into that. But I love the week to prepare for them. So all in all, I'm pretty happy with where we landed.
Yeah, it's great to have a selection Sunday that you're not biting your fingernails. You're not worried. Are we on the bubble? Are we getting in? What's happening? To be in there comfortably and to have to be arguing about 4 or 5 or 3 is such a great feeling, such a great place to be. And overall, with the 4 seeds, as you kind of look around at the other brackets and everything, I do like Indiana's overall draw and path, and IU continues to get a few favorable predictions from different different sportscasters and ESPN types all around. So that's interesting. And as an Indiana fan, always we get a little concerned when a little bit of news and chatter in the positive goes for us, because sometimes that doesn't bode well for us. But again, Indiana has the number 4 seed playing the number 13 Kent State. That game is going to be played Friday night, as Martha said, on TBS at 9:55 p.m. Very, very late game for that. If Kent State is ranked number 71 in Ken Palm, their record against Quad 1 is not good for them, 0-3. And good wins that they have on their resume are against Toledo, who was the regular season winner of the MAC this year. They beat them 2 times. They beat Akron 2 times. Northern Kentucky. Their bad losses, or not necessarily bad, but losses, are against Houston, which was a very low scoring game, which we'll kind of get into obviously details of why that was at 49-44. Gonzaga 73-66. So they played a lot of these big teams, quad one teams, very closely in these games. Their strength of schedule on the year is 189th. IU's was 13th, just for record. For you, what is your kind of overall thoughts of Kent State and what you've seen so far?
I think the interesting thing about Kent State is that you mentioned that 0-3 in quad one. They are battle tested, and a lot of these battles came very early in the season. They went to Houston and played Houston really, really well. They played Gonzaga really, really well. They almost beat Charleston, who won the Colonial Athletic Association League and earned their automatic bid, their tournament team. They played them really, really well. And the interesting thing about all three of those games is they got out to pretty decent sized leads against all three of those teams. So they're a team that likes to come out and punch you and try to get a lead. And then they're known for playing really, really tough defense. And, and I don't think you can at the end of the day, this is a team that Indiana should beat. If Indiana comes out with the focus and the effort that they should after, again, I'll go back to having the week to prepare. I love the fact that this team, that this program, that this coaching staff has a week to prepare for Akron. They're going to probably scrub every single game. I love that aspect of it. If we had a day, if this is a second round opponent, I'd be a little bit more concerned, just because I think they're just an opponent that I think that, they live on their defense. They've got some senior leadership in from the guard standpoint. So from that standpoint, that would concern me. But I love the fact that we've got a week to prepare. But you have to take them seriously. They're led by senior leadership, like I mentioned. But again, they played a really good schedule early in the season. And you take some of those non-conference early season matchups. You take them a little bit with a grain of salt, just because we know how weird sometimes those can get. Teams grow, develop throughout the length of the season. So you keep that in mind too. But the other side of it is Rob Senderhoff's an ex-IU guy. He was here when Kelvin Sampson was here. So there's that storyline as well. So he might be out for blood. He was here when that mess was going on. And I think he was part of the group that got fired. So there's all those storylines as well. But all in all, I love the fact that we get the amount of time we do to prepare for them.
Yeah, you mentioned a little bit about their guards. Sincere Carey is kind of their leadership guard. He won the MAC All Defensive Player of the Year. Their other two guards are very good as well. Carey has 92.2 of the team's minutes, so he obviously plays a lot for them. Another guard that's very active defensively for them is Jacobs, and Jacobs is tied for the third most steals in the nation. Clips that I have seen and that I've tried to bring up of this team this year, that is where they kind of excel. They are very active on defense. Their hands are very active on defense as well, disrupting passing lanes and everything like that. And that's one of the things that kind of concerns me in this matchup and in this game, because we know we've seen that before, where IU has had a little bit of mental lapses with some of those passes out on the key, not doing the best to pay attention to the small moments. And that is where Kent State is going to be able to capitalize against IU. Not very explosively, obviously defensively, and also equally their size. They're not as good size-wise. So Trace Jackson-Davis should be able to have a field day along with those kind of disruptions, obviously, in the passing lanes. I'm very interested to see how that changes with the passing out of the block that we see out of Trace Jackson-Davis. And along with those lines, a very good write-up from a person on Twitter, Taylor. His Twitter handle is @by Taylor L. He does a article at bitesizedbison.substack.com. Go check out his stuff. We tried to have him on the show. Unfortunately, work conflicts. He wasn't able to come on to talk to us, but he has some great write-ups, and I'm referring to a lot of the things that he brings up in this show and everything. But overall, I think IU should be able to win this game. I think if we get locked down and everything in this game and do what we can do and just pay attention, just focus, which obviously focus was the issue, I believe, in the Big Ten tournament. But if we stay focused, this is a game IU should be able to get by. Next, obviously, most likely for Indiana beyond that is going to be possibly Miami. Miami finished their season 25-7. They had a Ken Palm ranking of 4. Their record against quad ones was 5-5. Their top performers for their team is a pretty guard heavy team as well, with Isaiah Wong being their lead scorer at 15.9 points per game, 3.4 assists, and won the ACC Player of the Year. Their strength of schedule for them, and again, in comparison with IU's 13, is 85. Your thoughts on anything that you know about Miami?
I will say that my thoughts on Miami are not to get too ahead of yourself and think that Miami's just going to pound Drake, because I think Drake's won 13 out of 14 basketball games. Miami is dealing with I think their best post player and potentially best player. You know, he was in a cart yesterday at their watch party, and I think their coach Jim Larinaga said that they're not going to know until maybe late Thursday, early Friday morning, whether he's even going to be able to go. So I think, to me, that game is a coin flip. And Drake is one of those teams that I wouldn't want anything to do about with their perimeter shooting. I think they've got their conference player of the year on their team. So there's a lot of question marks around that game. In fact, it's one that I haven't. Right now, I'm leaning more towards maybe playing Drake. But your question about Miami on paper, I think should win this game, especially if they're full staff. They had a really great season in the ACC, and but again, I think they're a team we should beat, especially if they're a little bit banged up. They've got good perimeter play. They've got the point guard that transferred in from Kansas State. His name escapes me right now, but he's a heck of a player. They're a good all around team, and we're gonna have to be ready for them. I think they probably would have won the ACC tournament had they not faced some injuries. So it's going to be interesting. We've got to be ready for both teams, I think. And again, having this week to prepare is I think going to benefit us quite a bit. But both teams are very, very good. And I think it's going to come down to being able who can protect the rim the most in that Miami Drake game. And I think we'll if they have, I think his last name is Omeir, Omeir is the guy's name for Miami. Does that sound right? Yeah. If he's able to go, I think that gives Miami quite an advantage on the down low. If not, I like Drake in that game if he can't go, just with their perimeter shooting. So we've got to be ready for Nigel Pack. Somebody said in the comments, thank you. He was the kid that I think the NIL got involved, and that Miami lawyer down there wrote him that big check to come down and play after Bruce Weber got fired. But yeah, it's one of those matchups that I think we should be able to take the winner of whoever wins that game. If it's Miami, I think they're going to come in a little banged up. If it's Drake, as long as we can defend the perimeter, which at times, case in point, Penn State, we do struggle a little bit with, but we're playing for our lives at that point. If we can't find a way to get it done, then we don't deserve to win anyway. So that's where I'm at with that potential second game.
Yep, and Miami does shoot well at the three. They're fifth in the country in 3-point percentage, but similarly to IU, they don't take many. They're ranked 237th in threes taken. IU is ranked, for reference there, 24th in 3-point percentage and 352nd in attempts. 15 attempts IU, 20 per game against them. Again, yeah, I think that's definitely a matchup that's going to be interesting to see, and I hate that for them. As I tease that again in the conference tournaments, when you lose a player or integral part right before the big dance is always frustrating, and we will see. That'll be the game right before Indiana's game, and Indiana again with the late start in that game. Very interesting. Hopefully that doesn't affect the guys. Again, hard to say. If you want to quote Coach S, they're 20. They can deal with it. So whatever we go through there. wouldn't be remiss if we didn't also give a special shout out, obviously, to the women's team in their bracket. The women taking the second number one spot overall in theirs. They have a winner of a play-in game that they play, and they're in the Greenville 2 bracket. Fantastic to see them where they are and what they're going to do. And they play immediately the next game after the men play, I believe at 11:30 is that game. Your kind of thoughts on where the women place and how exciting it is to finally see that number one next to their name.
Yeah, I mean, how historic is that? I mean, obviously we saw with, I think they received the 2 seed last year, but and they did have their first and second round games in Assembly Hall last year. But to be the number 1 seed, the number 2 seed overall in the tournament, it speaks to how far Terry Morin has brought this program, and credit to her staff, this group of players. They went through some adversity there towards the end of the season. Every team does. I love the fact that they get a couple weeks to they were banged up a little bit too, and Mackenzie Holmes dealing with a lingering knee issue. Playing a lot of games in a short amount of time, and just like the men, the Big Ten on the women's side is probably even tougher than the men's side in terms of teams being ranked. And you've got Maryland, Iowa, who we know all about, and Ohio State, all these ranked opponents that they're having to face night in and night out. And to go through the regular season losing one game, they lost to Ohio State in the Big Ten tournament. But, these gals are battle tested. And if I know anything, I know that they're going to come out ready to go. I think that loss against Ohio State is going to have them hungry. And to get that number 1 seed, they've got I love their draw. They avoid UConn, they avoid Iowa, obviously the other number 1 seeds. They've got a decent path, and you never want to get too far ahead of yourselves. Mm-hmm. But they've got a decent path to the Final Four. I don't know a lot about, you look at the 2 seed in their bracket. I want to say it's Utah. 3 seed is LSU. Michigan, who's in the Big Ten, is on the other side of their bracket, so they'd have to go through some good teams to even get to that point. Villanova is probably their toughest in path to the Elite Eight, but you got to love their draw on paper. I mean, it's they've got a chance. They've got an honest chance, and I think that they'd be one of the favorites to get to Dallas and play for a national championship. So it's a game at a time thing. You never want to look too far ahead, but I love their draw. I love their path, and congratulations to them for getting that number 1 seed.
That's fantastic. Yep, I'm so excited. Such great basketball to be had. We're at this point. Weird to think back to where we were leading into this season. We were so excited about the potential of this team, the depth of this team, the ups and the downs, the injuries we've had to deal with, and thinking about, obviously, the excitement of his ex is going to be back and not having him, but then looking back to and thinking about what this team has done despite that injury, that major loss, and how they have battled and stayed focused with this, and the great job that this coaching staff has done. Obviously, we had some questions about them in a little bit of the middle of the season, but overall, right now, I love where the coaching staff has done. There was a great video that someone tweeted out from the I forget which game. It was one of the Big Ten games, and I think that Coach Walsh had the scout for that. And you can see Coach Walsh in the background pointing out and following and saw the play that the opposing team was doing, saw that there was a screen that was going to happen, and the IU players did not follow that screen or switch off that screen, which led to a 3-point shot from the other team, and it was a miss. But the frustration and the emotion out of Coach Walsh on the side was amazing, which shows that this coaching staff is locked in and has been doing such a great job of scouting opponents and everything like that. And just that is amplified in the tournament here, because turnarounds are quick and you don't know your opponents till sometimes less than 10, 12 hours before you're going to play them. So you're quickly trying to game plan them and get ideas and schemes and things going for that. Obviously, the biggest point to that is not losing yourself as a team. But just like where this Indiana team is headed and where things are going, and just excited to see some basketball. Your kind of overall thoughts of this team and in everything as we get into the first round.
Yeah, I asked myself, and I was asking yesterday, I'm like, in order for Indiana to have success in the NCAA tournament, blank is going to need to happen. And when I think about, and I'd love for you to answer that question too, but when I think about how the end of the season has transpired, and it's been kind of a, one good game, one bad game, one good game, one bad game, and obviously that you can't have that type of roller coaster ride going into a tournament, right? You've got to put together a stretch of good games, and what is Indiana going to have to do differently for that to happen, right? And I think part of it is what we've started to see with they've got to get some help from their bench. When you look at what Indiana is unable to do, I think kind of from the, I would say, the wing position, they're a little bit limited there, right? Miller Kopp, great, love what Miller brings, right? He's a great 3-point shooter, great spot up shooter. I think he's come a long way defensively, and you can say a lot of the same things about Trey, but they're limited in terms of their capacity on what they can do in terms of creating their own shot, driving to the hole. They're not that typical three that we see a lot of teams have. So that being said, what's it going to take for Indiana to have tournament success? You look at guys like, obviously we're going to need Jalen. We're going to need to ride the backs of Jalen Hood-Schifino, right? And, Trace Jackson Davis down low. We know that. But what else is it going to take? It's going to take some things we started to see in the Big Ten tournament. Guys like Tamar step up, right? Malik, I think he had a great game against Penn State. He started to find his way. I think he's another X factor for us that, his ability to kind of flip that switch and be able to stay on the court without fouling, I think is massive for Indiana. I mean, a lot of people, there was an argument to be made that he should have played a lot more against Penn State when Race was struggling a little bit. Malik came in and played a lot of good minutes and was scoring the basketball. And when you look at Indiana's efficiency rating with him on the court, there was an argument to be made that he probably should have played down the stretch in the second half. So I think both those things with Tamar and Malik bode well for Indiana. They're going to have to be guys that bring it in the tournament because there is going to be adversity, right? And it's all about how we handle that. And I think if those guys are ready to step up and play, which they're starting to show a little bit, I think that bodes well. So I'm hoping we can ride some of that momentum and put together a really nice stretch. And obviously some things have to go our way in terms of luck, right? I mean, I like our draw. I love our draw, but things have to go right. And if we take care of business, I like our chances against a team like Houston too. They're a little bit banged up. So all in all, I'm feeling well. I know things have to go right, but I like where we're at. I honestly do.
Yep. And John asked and everything, are Jordan Geronimo and Caleb Banks going to get some minutes in the tournament? I think they will. I think you obviously need players like that to step in and at least give guys rest as you get the quick turnarounds on games and everything. Rest needs to happen. And I think I'm along the same lines as you. I think the question is, who is that third scorer? Who is that third person to step up and flash and be the contributor? Because that's where IU, like you said, has to be. There has to be that third person to contribute. And there can be times where it's maybe two guys that are each scoring 6, 7, 8 points average for themselves. But again, like you said, where guys are trending, where guys are picking up, I like what we have in the cannon, what is loaded in the gun and ready to go off. And to that point, as he asked, Jordan Geronimo has been struggling recently. Is he going to turn it on like he did in March last year? And to know that he can be that cannon to go off for us at any point, it is great to have too. But we need to have that third player. And I think it also comes down to two F words: fight and focus for this team. I think we've seen recently where they have continued to fight and they have battled back even closely as they were down 7-10 points with a minute and a half left in that Penn State game to get back. And it has to be focus because we get going early in some of these games and then we start to lose focus and the other team goes on runs and that fight comes back and we get back in and we focus a little more. So as long as we get consistent fight and focus throughout these games, IU can do very well. And like you said, I enjoy the matchups I enjoy the lineups that we have going through this, and it's just such an exciting time for us to be Indiana Hoosiers and to be in March and not to have to worry about the things we've had to worry about in the past. So, guys, that's going to do it on this edition of Hoosier Morning After. Thank you for being with us. Thank you to Martha for being here with me, as always. Special thanks to Bob Thompson for producing the music you hear on the show. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at General Chadwick. Follow Martha as well at The Mop Lady. We will be back to try to do quick shows this week in between the games and everything as we go through the tournament and everything. I will be remote for those, so I apologize for the quality in advance as those shows are going to be. But it's so exciting. Thank you for being with us, guys. Go out there, guys. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy some Indiana basketball this weekend. Let's go, Hoosiers.